What are I bonds and what are some of the huge drawbacks and rewards that nobody else talks about? Well, to start off, I-Series bonds are government-issued saving bonds yielding very attractive interest rates. You can actually buy as much as $10,000 worth of I bonds per person per year, and at this point in time, the projected yield for the next 6 months is a 9.62% annualized return for virtually no risk. Where else would you get that? I have a complete guide on the details and also a step-by-step tutorial on exactly how you can buy I bonds, so be sure to check that out at the end of this video. Now, beyond that, let's get into some advantages and disadvantages. We'll first kick off with the advantages. But first, do me a solid, destroy that like button, and also subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this. Moving on, let's talk about some advantages of owning I-Series bonds. Let's face it, I bonds have rather promising returns, as much as 9.62% if you're watching this video right now, anytime before November 2022. In fact, if you're watching this video in April of 2022, you're pretty lucky because you already know that you will be locking in 7.12% interest rate for the first 6 months that you hold these bonds, and for the next 6 months that you hold these bonds, you will be getting an average annual rate of about 9.62%. So when you combine the 7.12% interest rate and the 9.62% interest rate, overall over a 12-month time span, you will be locking in 8.3% interest yield on average for the next 12 months. The next advantage is that I bonds are virtually risk-free. Listen, where else are you going to get a 9.62% return on your investment virtually risk-free? It is highly unlikely, but your only risk with I bonds is the government defaulting. And if that ever happens, know that we're probably going to have much bigger problems. The next advantage I want to bring up is the generous accrual period. What's great about I bonds is that the interest fully accrues for the entire month on the first of every single month. So let's say it's April 25th of 2022 or it's May 25th of 2022 and you buy I bonds on the 25th of any given month. Well, you're actually going to accrue interest for that entire month, because despite you buying these bonds on the 25th of the month, it's almost like you bought these bonds on the 1st of the month. Next up, we have tax benefits. So know that the interest that you do accumulate from I bonds is exempt from both state and local income taxes. So let's say you put in $10,000 into I bonds and about a year later, you come out with $1,000 profit. Well, guess what? Your state and local government cannot tax you on that $1,000 of profit. To top it all off, and not a lot of people know this, but you can actually have it so that I bond interest is also exempt from federal taxes, and you're able to do this if you use that interest that you earn for educational related expenses, as long as your income doesn't disqualify you, of course. Kick out with the disadvantages. Let's first start with the limit. So unfortunately, whether you're a peasant or you're a multi-billionaire like myself, you can still only purchase $10,000 of I bonds per year per person or entity. So this means if you have a lot of cash sitting around, unfortunately, you can't just deploy all of it at once into I-Series bonds. My advice to you would be to leverage the fact that each business entity or individual can buy I bonds separately. So let's say you're an individual and you're married and you also have a business. Well, at that point, you can buy $10,000 worth of I bonds for yourself, 10,000 I bonds for your spouse, and $10,000 for your business, LLC, whatever the case is. So up to $30,000 if that's your situation. And obviously, if you have multiple different businesses, then you can still purchase $10,000 per entity. Next up, one huge disadvantage of I bonds is that there's absolutely no paper trail of your acquisition or your I bond activity. Everything is done through the Treasury Direct website, so there's no paper bonds you get in the mail. There's no letter certifying that you purchased I bonds. Everything is electronic on their website or through your email. So here's what I would recommend. Keep a track of everything on paper. Write down everything as far as your Treasury Direct account number, your login information, your security questions, the date you purchased I bonds, everything. Write this down on a piece of paper where nobody else can find it except for you. Keep it in a safe place, and that's going to be your best bet to keeping track of everything and having a paper trail of everything so that you can reference it later on. In addition, buying and redeeming I bonds also has to be done entirely through the Treasury Direct website, and trying to get in touch with someone can take up to a couple weeks. weeks. So if you are having some challenges or difficulties, this is a bad experience compared to historical times when you could just walk into your local bank to buy or redeem paper bonds. Now, luckily, again, I do have a step-by-step tutorial right here on how you can buy these I-bonds, so hopefully that should make it a smooth process. But again, if you run into any difficulties, it might be a little bit difficult to get in touch with someone on a timely basis. Next up, we have penalty. So unfortunately, unless you plan to hold your I-bonds for a minimum of 5 years, the moment you redeem these bonds within that 5-year time period, you will be foregoing 3 months worth of interest rate. So you will be forfeiting the last 3 months of interest that you have accrued. Meaning, if you bought these I-bonds in April of 2022 and your intention was to hold these bonds for only 12 months, well, guess what? If you wait 12 months and then you redeem your bonds, you're actually only going to be awarded that first 9 months of interest from when you purchased these bonds. So unless you do plan on holding these bonds for at least 5 years, know that if you do redeem these bonds within 5 years, you'll actually be skewing down your actual interest yield. The last drawback I want to mention is, are you actually winning with I-bonds? Let's face it, given that they're going to be yielding a 9.62% interest yield is pretty attractive. It makes that a no-brainer investment. But unfortunately, what many people don't realize is the only reason that this yields 9.62% is because, well, that's the actual CPI reading. You see, you're not actually increasing your buying power by purchasing I-bonds at a 9.62% interest rate. All you're really doing is preserving that value because, well, inflation is just about the same rate, if not actually higher. So while this certainly makes the case that, putting your money in a savings account might make you lose as much as 10% per year, you're actually not really coming out ahead with I-bonds anyway. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to buy a used car and that used car is worth $10,000 today, but instead you opt to put that money in I-bonds. So you put $10,000 in I-bonds today, hoping that, 12 months later it's worth 8% more. You get an 8% yield. So effectively in 12 months, your $10,000 will become $10,800 at the point you redeem them. And this is just theoretical. Well, after that 12 months, now you have $10,800 and you're in the used car market again. So you want to buy that same car that you wanted to buy last year. Well, guess what? Because of inflation, that $10,000 car is now worth $10,800. So this is exactly what I mean. You're not actually coming out ahead. All you're really doing is preserving your purchasing power. You're really putting a defensive play on. It's not an offensive play. You're not beating inflation. You're just keeping up with inflation. So ultimately, this makes I-bonds nothing more than a hedge against inflation. Well, that's a wrap. Hope you found this helpful. If you're curious as to what else you can do besides I-bonds to put your cash to work, be sure to check out some of my other videos on my channel and be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching.